Oscar Piastri is already showing a great form in McLaren in his very first F1 season. Front row in Suzuka, beating Lando Norris and losing only to Max Verstappen. So let's break down his fastest lap in comparison with Lando Norris to find out where he managed to outperform his more experienced teammate. Oscar, Lando, we see them crossing the start-finish line, shots are synchronized, and we see that Oscar had a better exit out of the last corner. So already a small advantage to him, but still we move on towards the first and the second corner, which are approached as one corner in Suzuka. In F1 cars, entry point comes prior to the braking point, and we already see different approaches. Lando Norris is way more smooth with his inputs. He firstly goes off the throttle, then engages on the brake pedal, while Oscar switches from acceleration to deceleration pretty fast, and will start his braking way later into the corner, so he will trail brake a little bit more. But it will result in Norris actually having a more stable and a faster exit out of the corner, turn 2, the buzzing corner, as they call it from now on. And we see a faster exit from Lando. Now, we approach the S-curves. We already see Lando going off the throttle a bit more in the first corner, and we will see different pedal work in the second corner. We see Oscar is using his brakes. Of course, it is just a little touch, but still, Oscar is a bit more initiative with his pedals. So, the third corner in this sequence, and we see at some point Lando is fully off the throttle, but those differences are actually quite minor. We see Oscar being faster in the middle of the corner, but in the exit of the corner Lando will be faster. 10 km per hour is a huge difference. And also we'll see a difference in lines, because Oscar is a bit more wider. Here his line lines somewhere at around here. Lando's line is a bit more classical. But once again, in F1 car this line is acceptable, I should say. And we go forward. Dunlop curve and the end of the first sector. Quite a huge 10.5 win for Lando Norris. We see his smoother approach actually worked better in those fast sweeping S's. But we move on to sector 2, and this is the brilliance of Suzuka circuit, because the character and the natural feel of the circuit changes several times throughout a lap. And once again we see a different approach. Now Oscar will brake way earlier than Lando Norris, but braking earlier and having more brake input in first Degner leads Oscar to being able to brake way later for the second Degner. Quite a big difference in braking points here, and actually I should say that I like Lando's approach a bit more for those two Degner corners. The idea to bring in more speed seems more appropriate here, but we see Norris having a slight oversteer on exit, but he is still ahead now. And we move on to the famous hairpin. We see Norris is already here, so let's drag Oscar towards him. And for hairpin they start braking at the exact same point, just where the track straightens. But this hairpin is quite unorthodox, because F1 drivers practically never, especially in qualifying, touch apex here. And there are two reasons for it. First of all, there is a positive camber, but of course it's not so huge as for example in turn 3 in Zandvoort, and the camber itself is not the only reason. The second reason that adds to a combination is the track layout, because drivers want to start braking roughly at about this point where car is already somewhat straightened, in order to not start braking with a turning wheel and with an unbalanced car. But if you start braking here, you are just a bit late to make it perfectly on apex. You have to turn a bit later and miss the apex as a result, but the camber will compensate for it. And we see Oscar manages to bring in way more speed. He is choosing even wider line than Lando Norris here, and this line actually pays off. He is clearly winning this hairpin, and we move on. We move on towards the famous spoon curve. And once again, this similar situation as in turns 1 and 2. Lando Norris is doing a bit of a lift and coasting. I can actually call him the smoothest driver on F1 grid, and it was working in his best interest throughout the whole 2022 season and the beginning of 2023 season, but as for now, I see that the trend is changing, and this more aggressive approach to driving starts to pay off. So I will not be surprised if eventually the balance of power in McLaren team will change towards the end of the season and especially towards 2024, mark my words. But we move on to the spoon. Oscar starts braking a bit later because we see he is now a bit further down. And let's see how they will. We see Oscar is overlapping a bit with his pedals, which fits in a drone picture perfectly. And on the exit of the corner we see some small corrections from Oscar. And for now on and for sector 2, Oscar has 0.07 of a second over Lando Norris. So we will drag Lando Norris towards Oscar Piastri, but Oscar still has to cut off some time, and let's see how he will do this. Because basically sector 3 is one braking phase and one pair of corners. 130R is a straight line for F1 cars, and we see Norris starts braking way earlier than Oscar Piastri, which again fits in this too smooth driving style picture, and which will eventually result in Lando Norris entering the corner earlier than Oscar Piastri, which results in different lines, but we see they both are aggressively attacking this curb, pretty much maximum that you can take in an F1 car, and we see Oscar with his line is able to carry more speed with him throughout the chicane. And we move on towards turn 18. Once again we see different lines because Oscar nearly touches the edge of the track, doing more sort of triangular line, while Lando is a bit more smooth. And I like this line from Oscar because, as you know and as you may remember, this area is pretty unstable for rear axle. So the idea to straighten the line as much as possible throughout this whole unstable phase and then make the final turn of the car seems to me pretty genius in comparison to this more conventional line throughout the corner. And it actually pays its dividends because 8 more tenths of a second were chopped off the line, very close result in the end, but still Piastri managed to outperform Lando Norris. So we see Oscar being a bit more aggressive, a bit more demanding from the car, and I like his style, and I actually predict that the balance of power in McLaren might and will shift. Of course, Lando Norris is a hell of a driver himself, but Oscar has a huge potential, as well as my channel, so please subscribe to it, leave a like, leave your comment, and see you in the next video.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey.